Brown. We'll work very closely with you on those issues.
Thanks.
All right, let's see. Next is Senator Tillis and then Senator Cornyn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Werfel, for being here. I appreciate it, the time that you and Ron spent in my office yesterday covering a lot of questions, and also want to welcome Beth, Molly, and Seth. I heard what Senator Blackburn said about coming and visiting Tennessee. Great state, lived there, but I know where your roots are planted. Thank you for being willing to take on this role. I don't think there's anybody who's in this position that knows that the IRS needs to modernize, change, be more customer-focused, and I gathered some of that from your discussion. You were at BCG as a managing partner and director for, was it about 8 years, 7 or 8 years?
Yeah, about 9, coming up on 9 years, yes.
And what was the nature of the practice there? Did you work on enterprise transformation? What were the, and that was in the public sector, right?
Yeah, so I worked with federal agencies, mostly with the Defense Department, but with the Commerce Department and other agencies. And the mission or the objective was, how do we bring private sector solutions successfully to government?
And how'd you do on any particular project that you could mention?
We're very successful. I mean, an example that I would provide, and I'll try to be brief, is we worked closely with the commissary system at the Defense Department. I brought experts from BCG in managing supermarkets to help there. Yeah. We introduced a private label brand for the first time, and we saved hundreds of millions of dollars in how they acquire goods.
I think that it's important to know that somebody with some enterprise transformation experience, particularly in the public sector, is desperately needed at the IRS. And speaking of an enterprise transformation, I see that as what I hoped the Inflation Reduction Act, particularly in the IRS space, would have achieved. I'm curious, this would be after you're confirmed, but I don't see the distribution of money. I see less than half of it going to anything that's more customer focused. The other one half, rightfully, through a cynical eye, it looks like it's more on enforcement and audit. So it's going to be very helpful. Will you commit to me when you're confirmed that we can get a report back from the IRS on how these buckets fit into improving the customer experience versus becoming an additional burden and threat to a taxpayer?
Senator, yes, I mentioned to Senator Crapo earlier that, you know, as a former budgeteer, I think I'll be able to earn your trust with a very clearly articulated spend plan for how the money is.
I'll tell you why. My predisposition is really just looking at the buckets: taxpayer services, enforcement, operations support, business systems modernization, and a cynic could say that 2/3 of the bill has less to do with improving the customer service, the customer experience and enterprise transformation, and more to do with actually making you less liked by the taxpayers. So I'd really be interested in seeing the flexibilities in the IRA that are going to let you put money on the best and highest use, and a lot of that has to be, you're never going to be one of the top 10 most admired federal agencies because you take money from people and that's your job. But improving the experience, I think, is going to be very important. When we were doing the bipartisan infrastructure deal, I was supporting good governance policies at the IRS, improving consolidated audit trail, and enacting higher penalties for IRS agents or IRS employees who leak taxpayer information. Do you agree or disagree that we've got to work on something like a consolidated audit trail for the IRS?
Senator, I want to look at all the different levers that can be taken to improve data security. I want to sit down with the team at the IRS, with your staff and others, and look at these various levers and say, what can we strengthen? What can we change? What can we shift? All with the benefit of improving data security. So I'm certainly open to exploring these suggestions that you have.
Yeah, I think one of the, just a final comment, you don't have to respond. I intend to support your confirmation, incidentally. The $400,000 cap isn't very consoling to me, and we mentioned this in the office. On the one hand, combined income, my wife and I fall below the cap, so as an individual, I should probably feel better about it. But the small businessman that I spoke to just a couple of weeks ago that's got a business with 3 service trucks, a wife who's the CEO, the CFO, and basically mandates the schedule of the husband. That's it. That's all they got. And they've got $1 million in income that they're going to have to report. So I think it's a cop-out to say that the $400,000 limit means that the little guy shouldn't mind. You and I talked about, instead of, a simplistic number cutoff, there could be a lot of people under $4,000 or $400,000 that potentially are evading taxes. But there are a lot of people, based on the activities of the business, it just doesn't look like it'd be the best and highest use of our resources to go into that small businessman's presence without any strong indicative information and subject them to an audit. So I hope as we go further into the discussion, we can figure out how we can tailor, get people who are not paying what the law requires, stipulating to Senator Johnson. Some of it shouldn't even be on the books, in my opinion, and it should be simplified. But I think that's the way I want the IRS to look at it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator.